This is the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Cottonwood, Arizona, to be held May 19th, 2020 at 6 p.m. at the Cottonwood Community Clubhouse. If we could please have our Deputy Clerk take the roll.
Councilmember Wilden.
Here.
Councilmember Halls.
Here.
Councilmember Hauge.
Here.
Councilmember Naren.
Here.
Vice Mayor Matthews.
Here.
Mayor Linsky.
Here.
And Councilmember Henry is absent.
Great. She did let us know that she had an emergency come up work-wise, and if she would be able to attend, she'll be here as quick as she can. So, okay, next is Pledge of Allegiance. If you wouldn't mind, please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That works a lot better when you don't do it virtually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks to everyone, staff and everyone involved in setting this meeting up. It's very nice to meet safely in public again and to see all of our colleagues with us. Physically distant, but with us. So thanks. I know it's a lot of work to set all this up, make this happen, but I got to be honest, I could get real used to meeting like this. This is a beautiful facility, so maybe we should discuss that. Okay, up next is a brief summary of current events by the mayor, city council, and/or city manager. The public body does not propose, discuss, deliberate, or take legal action on any matter brought up during the summary unless the specific matter is properly noticed for legal action. Do any council members have anything to report?
Hasn't been a lot going on.
No? Okay. Yeah, I don't have much else to report myself. We still continue with our weekly meetings for the Economic Recovery Task Force. I think that's going well. A lot of great ideas have come out of that. I think Mr. Corbin could probably go into more detail on that.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I didn't know if Councilmember Wilden was going to talk about a meeting we had today. We had a meeting with a staff of Senator Sinema, and it was very interesting. But if you wanted to...
I'll chime in. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, why don't you give the summary, and then I'll kind of...
All right.
comment.
The meeting went very well. They're aware. The biggest ask we asked for was replacement of lost revenue. So we explained, as many cities and communities in Arizona, the cost of the COVID response is minimal. Extra cleaning, a little bit of extra work, but the direct cost is minimal. It's the lost revenue that is really impacting cities and towns throughout the country, and especially Arizona. So they acknowledged that, and they were working on that to see what they could do, and they believed any future act, CARES Act 0.4 or 4.0 or whatever it's going to be, hopefully will include some revenue for cities and towns, including direct revenues to small towns. As you know, the last one did. Large communities over 500,000 did get some revenue, but it has not yet trickled down to our communities. One of the issues is that every state did it a little differently, and in most states, the money has already been distributed to small towns and communities. That has not happened in Arizona, so they're aware of it and are working on it. We did thank them for the transit money. As you know, we're getting fully funded for transit. So the CARES Act did come through for our transit. We're still not charging ridership fees and those kinds of things. We also have a few buses planned for this next year that they're going to help with, so we were appreciative of that. They seem to be in tune with the needs of local communities. The second big ask we asked for is to treat counties, towns, and municipalities and cities like other businesses. We have to operate like other businesses, and the federal relief packages helped out businesses. They gave, you could get reimbursed for any COVID leave for employees. Of course, you could get loans, forgivable loans for salaries and those kinds of things. We're not eligible for that. We're not eligible for any reimbursement for those kinds of things. Even our unemployment is only reimbursed at about a 50% rate. So we end up paying for that. So very little, in my opinion, to help cities and towns. But she seemed to be aware of that. Did I miss anything there?
Brian did a really good job of pinpointing exactly what we need. And it wasn't a long list necessarily, it was just the reality of it. And that was one of my questions. I said, they commented, two things. They commented on the fact that there's going to be, they're advocating for direct money to the communities. They think it's going to happen. And my first question was, what's the reality of that really happening? And they commented. And then my last comment was, you were there, was there is a city council meeting tonight. What good news can I take to the city council? They did a great job, and I motioned to him, of skirting the issue and asking another question. So I didn't really get an answer out of that. But we are going to keep them as a main contact, and they seem to be amenable to that. And we also invited the senator to come to Cottonwood, and I think she will. I really do.
Ben talked about his last visit to the state park here in town and loves it, and it's an escape. So the office, at least, is a big fan of the Verde Valley. So that was good to hear that we're on their map. A couple other things. If you haven't received a copy yet, we are now doing weekly newsletters from our economic development team. Tricia and Lee are doing that. So we try to get those out by Thursday. And every week, Friday, no later. So Councilmember Wilden had a great idea to let the council do the letter, the opening letter. So the mayor did last week. The vice mayor is doing this week. So if you want to participate in the following weeks, that is now open. So let me know, and we'll put you on the list of doing the opening letter to businesses for our weekly newsletter. Thank you.
Great.
We are planning an Old Town car show for Saturday, May 30th. We don't plan on any closures, road closures, or anything like that. We'll do what we can to recommend social distancing, but it's really to support our local restaurants and tasting rooms and bars to get some more traffic down here. Hopefully, by the end of the week, you'll see some advertisements, some marketing going on. I'm very excited about that. Stay tuned. June, we're doing a drive-in movie. I believe it's Dr. Doolittle for the families in our community, and we are still planning to move forward with July 4th. It might be a tailgating or a car event, but we are still moving forward with giving something for the community to celebrate and do over the summer, so stay tuned. I do want to announce that all city offices are open to one degree or another. The rec center is only open for the exercise floor. Our group exercises, the inside gym is still not open, but stay tuned as we social distance open that facility. The full-time staff is working very hard. We clean that all the touch points about every half hour in there with full-time staff, so they're working very hard and making it work. Most of the patrons seem very appreciative of the efforts to be open. Of course, last week we opened up pickleball outdoors, basketball courts, all our playgrounds are open. The library is open for curbside deliveries. You'll hear more from Ryan tonight. And then City Hall and most of the other facilities are open, or there's a phone number on the door, and we'll come out and let you in, depending on if we have staff there to open the door or not. So I think the clerk's office operating that, Public Works, opened up their front door, but you may have to call to get a person to come up there. But I'm told Public Works doesn't get many visitors to their facility. So. We are hosting a blood drive through the American Red Cross on Tuesday, June 2nd from 10 to 3. We sent out a PSA today, so stay tuned for that. And you can sign up at 1-800-RED-CROSS to donate blood. Again, yesterday, the Cottonwood Public Library resumed curbside service for patrons. And then I want to let you know that the Cat Links is starting to see an increase of ridership. So they're meeting with their partners in Sedona, Camp Verde, Clarkdale, and otherwise to see about going back to expanded services to our normal route. So stay tuned for that as needed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. And I don't know if we touched on it during our last meeting, but there was an effort from the county supervisor to get the mayors and managers of all the Verde Valley communities together to talk about our messaging as we work toward opening up as the executive orders are lifted. And so I think there's obviously a lot of businesses in the area, residents alike, that are really excited and eager that we're opening up. So we're really trying to manage that, manage public health along with economic development and recovery. And so part of that campaign, Sedona really was tip of the spear with their Safe, Clean, Ready program that I think actually really came from Jennifer Wesselhoff, the director of the CEO of their chamber. Anyway, great program. They put up a website just letting visitors know that they are Safe, Clean, Ready. So different businesses can sign on to that and promote that program. So being shameless, we asked, can we please plagiarize that program? And they willingly agreed, and it quickly spread into a Verde Valley-wide program. So I think you sent out information on that. We should have all received information on the Safe, Clean, Ready program. But I'm excited to see it happening. I think it's a great way to let visitors know that we are open for business. And we still, though, really need to balance that with making sure that we're keeping our vulnerable populations safe. Because most folks agree that, you know, coronavirus will have a resurgence in the fall, which will be alongside our flu season, of course, and we still have a lot of populations in Cottonwood that are quite vulnerable to that. So we still need to be responsible and do our part to make sure that we limit the spread as much as possible. I did speak with our chief medical officer at the end of last week just to get his take on how things are panning out, and you know, we have not been overwhelmed in Cottonwood at Verde Valley Medical Center. We've been really fortunate. So I just want to make sure we don't squander our good fortune and still really keep public health top of mind. Anything else to add on that?
No, I was just going to say we did send out the posters for that campaign, and this weekend as I was eating in Old Town, they had some of the businesses actually had the posters already up in their windows. It's really about commitment to safety. It's another marketing opportunity for businesses so that if a citizen or a resident in Phoenix or somebody around here wants a safe place to go, these businesses have made a commitment to follow CDC guidelines. So it's just another way to connect in places that they've done things to create a safe environment as best as they can.
Yep. And our recovery is going to be long and painful for a lot of our local businesses. And you know, as you all know, Cottonwood was founded by entrepreneurs, and you know, we are a community that is made up of businesses and families that support them. So we're really inseparable from our business community. And I think it's just really important as we move forward in the coming weeks and months that we do everything we can to support our local establishments. We talked a lot about that with the Economic Recovery Task Force and trying to find out ways that we can highlight the offerings of our local business community and make sure that we're not traveling over the hill or down to the valley to get the supplies we need, that we're not clicking for the purchases that we want to make, that we first source out local businesses because they support our families. And it's just crucial that we do everything we can to give back to them. One great example that I mentioned at last week's meeting was Blaze & M. Lori Mayberry and the Mayberry family has been just instrumental in economic development in this community. And they were the first to, as their business was suffering, the first to provide free meals to the service industry workers. You know, really the first to step up when times are hard. And so if we don't find ways to support those businesses, we're going to find our recovery very challenging here. And as much as we rely on the big boxes, it's pretty seldom that those big boxes will step forward and give back to the community in a way that our local businesses do. So just do everything you can, and please spread the word to help support those businesses. Did you have a comment? Yes.
I do. I have a question. Apparently, Sedona is just packed, and traffic is horrendous. Do we have some sort of a plan B, if you will, if people get out of hand and just come up from Phoenix and wherever and just inundate us, which is good and bad?
So, Mr. Mayor, I can let you know that we've increased all of our trash receptacles throughout, including the jail trail. I walked it with the state parks, our local ranger here, George, to make sure that we were helping keep those areas clean. We got rid of some graffiti that was actually on the trail earlier this week. And then I've worked with our Public Works Department to make sure we could handle those kinds of issues that might come from overcrowding. So I think we're ready here. They've added staff for the weekend to check on our bathrooms. We've increased our cleaning of all our public restrooms, outdoor public restrooms, to 3 times a day. So we're stocking them, cleaning them. So as far as outdoors, we seem to be ready for our parks. We cleaned all of our play equipment before we opened. So I think we're ready for the city of Cottonwood. I think our businesses are more than ready. The restaurants that I was at this weekend were all full, but nobody had standing room only. They still had a little bit of capacity left. So I would say we're ready. I know that the hotels are ready.
Yeah.
I know that Anne Marie over there at Pines Motel is ready, and Eric Jerson still has vacancies, except for, I believe, this Saturday of Memorial Day weekend. Next Saturday, he is already full. So he's excited about that for having a night already booked out. So it's a good question. One other thing, Mayor, if I can, is we will be working with Sedona to advertise in Sedona, so that if they don't have a place to go in Sedona, we are working out with the chamber to put pamphlets in their visitor center, and then we've been working with the chamber up there to see what we can do to help. We were on a phone call today about outdoor economics, and I reminded Jennifer that Cottonwood is a part of their sustainable tourism plan, spreading people out throughout the Verde Valley, so they're not just doing trails. They're also doing the river here, doing our trails, drinking wine here. So we met today with our partners in Camp Verde and Clarkdale and Jerome and Sedona, talking about spreading those people out. One of the things that Jennifer has said is that they're expecting day travel this year, less conferences, less week-long vacations. So it's going to look busier during the day, but they're not staying as long. So we're going to be trying to do things to help get them to stay in the Verde Valley for a longer period of time.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we're going to move on to unfinished business. Just one item under unfinished business is ordinance number 676, annexing the Sawmill Gardens patio homes neighborhood pursuant to the provisions of ARS 9-471 and adopting city zoning of PAD, planned area development, for the annexation territory. This is the second and final reading. Evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, Scott Ellis, Community Development Director. Good to see everybody in person again. You're a little spread out, though, so it's hard to. This is the second and final reading of Ordinance 676, which is the annexation of Sawmill Gardens patio homes. If you remember, it's a 58-home community, little subdivision in itself off of Cottonwood Street, just before it turns to dirt, north side of the road from where Safeway is. We have had a little over 70% of the respondents from the community have given us their signed petitions in support of it. We have not received any negative input from the residents, so that 72% just represents the response that we have gotten. Not everybody always responds, so it's pretty high response. We're required by law to get only 51%, the number of people and value of the properties. Again, on May 5th, you guys had approved Resolution 3053, which is a infrastructure and services guideline to provide that there if it's required. That's usually for undeveloped areas. This is fully developed. They do have water services. They don't have sewer. We're not going to require them to connect to sewer, but if they did in the future, it would be at their expense. Any questions from council? Mr. Mayor?
Any questions from council? No?
Hi, Scott, are we going to charge the sewer fee even though they're not connected?
I believe that was going to be left out. They weren't going to be charged that sewer fee without being connected.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Hulse, the way the ordinance reads is if it's readily available, you would be charged a sewer fee. It's not readily available. It only goes to the outside of the annexed area. So we don't consider that ready. It doesn't come in front of their properties.
Right.
So they would not be charged the sewer fee.
Good.
Have we received any letters, public comment, or anything on this item?
No, Mr. Mayor, we
No.
haven't received any negative or anything like that.
Okay. All right. Well, we've gone over this at great length and have met with HOA board members and many of the residents there. It seems like this is a win-win all around. And I'm just really pleased that this came before us, and I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. Move to approve ordinance number 676.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Hulse made the motion, and Councilmember Nairn seconded it. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hulse,
Yes.
Councilmember Hauge,
Yes.
Councilmember Naren,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilden,
Yes?
Vice Mayor Matthews,
Yes.
Mayor Linsky,
Yes.
motion carried.
Very good. I don't know if anyone is watching from the neighborhood tonight, but welcome to the city of Cottonwood.
Yes.
We're very pleased to have you. If we could please have the deputy clerk read ordinance number 676 by title only.
Ordinance number 676, an ordinance of the mayor and city council of the city of Cottonwood, Yavapai County, Arizona, annexing certain territory contiguous to the city limits of the city of Cottonwood, being approximately 10 acres in size, sawmill gardens, patio homes pursuant to the provisions of ARS 9-471, and adopting city zoning of PID, planned area development, on the annexation territory. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we move into new business. Following items are for council discussion, consideration, and possible legal action. Up first is the update regarding the Cottonwood Public Library's strategic plan. Evening.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor, Council, Ryan Bigelow, the Library Director for the Cottonwood Public Library. I originally brought you the strategic plan, which provided us our 7 strategic priorities a little over a year ago. And this has been something that the Library Advisory Board has worked really hard on creating, and it really drives our conversations as we move forward. We try to review this on a monthly basis and get updates and try to not let this just go away. We continue with this and we stay with it. So I'd like to thank the Library Advisory Board for being a big part of this. I'd like to thank the public library staff too for buying into some of this and making some of this work. So with that, these are some of the accomplishments, just kind of a review of what we've been up to the last year. To go back, to create our priorities, we talked to a lot of folks in our community, surveyed a lot of folks in our community, got a lot of feedback. Patrons, had the good fortune of talking to some high school students at Mingus. Community members, had interviews, one-on-one interviews with 17 local community leaders. That was to me, that was the goal of the project, is if I were to do this again, that we would do more of that. That was getting inside of businesses, getting inside of local leadership and understanding what their issues are, what their problems are, and then how the library can help. So in all, we got input from 471 community members to help us create these 7 strategic priorities. A reminder, so this is what we came up with, and the Library Advisory Board helped us kind of prioritize these a little bit. Create an inviting space for everyone, maximize our hours of operation, provide cultural diversity, encourage children to experience the world, improve adult digital literacy, strengthen community connectedness, and engage community members not now utilizing the library. So those are the priorities, and we've worked a little bit on some, a lot on others, and here's kind of where we're at. Create an inviting space for everyone. I feel like this is obvious. This is an obvious one, but it's important for public libraries being a public space and really being inviting for everybody and anybody. We've upgraded and reorganized some of our furniture with some help of some of our local facilities. They've donated some nice new furniture for us to be able to reuse. Turned the southwest room into more of a reading room area. We've updated and enhanced the main entrance. When you walk in, you're not just right into a wall now. It opens up and it's wide. Really happy about the computer area. There's a fireplace there. I worked at the library for 2.5 weeks before I understood that there was a fireplace there, so we reorganized some of that and exposed that. We've gone almost completely to LED lights now. That helps, obviously, the electric bill, but also just better lighting in the facility. People can see what's going on. And then our phone messaging system, citywide we did that, but we also included a Spanish option in there, so we're really proud of that. We created a volunteer greeter position, similar to a Walmart, where somebody just makes eye contact with you and says hello as you come in. That's working out well. And then something small but significant, we updated our staff name tags, so it's people can actually see what your name is and call you by name. I think that makes a big difference. This was a big one here. We maximize hours of operation. We were able to actually increase our hours. We did this back in September, October. 3 additional hours to the public per week, One of the biggest complaints we received was our lack of hours on Mondays. We were only open 10 to 2. Now we're able to open 9 to 5 on Mondays. We did this at no additional staffing costs, so some creative, and again, thank you to the staff for making this work, because without them this doesn't happen. And we also created some evening hours, so folks who do work a 9 to 5 could get to the library on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, so we thought that was important as well. Provide cultural diversity. We did get a grant, and we're almost ready to hit send on that order for $4,000 of Spanish materials to improve and update our Spanish collection. We also partnered with the Camp Verde Community Library to do a survey for Spanish-speaking community members too, to try to help us understand what kind of materials we should be purchasing. We've continued our monthly open mic program so that our creators, our artists, can come in and do poetry, music, whatever they may please. And we also created and introduced a Music in the Stacks program where we have live music in the evenings at the library. Now, I say these as of right now, and obviously we will be adjusting as we move forward. But some of these programs, I will note that we plan to continue some of them virtually. Facebook Live has been very successful for the library, so some of those plans are still in the works. Encourage children to experience the world. This is really important to me, and we talk about at the library, the sustainability of our library. We need to get young families in there. We need to get them using the library and come back, and when they have young families themselves, they'll be library users too. So we worked with Cottonwood Community School. We did the coding robots over there. We introduced and created, with a volunteer, a coding program on Saturdays for the teens. We did some trips, some experiences for our summer reading program, including a trip to the Lowell Observatory. We did a field trip. Of course, the Comic Expo. That's a big one, and will continue to be a big one once we're able to continue with that program. We had star parties where we brought out the Verde Valley astronomers, and they came out and brought telescopes. And we got kids to see the moon and the stars. We just recently introduced a teen sign language program. And then we also just introduced Running with the Wild. So we had, our first animal was a blind owl, a baby blind owl who came and did a presentation on that. So bringing experiences to kids who sometimes can't exactly go to the zoo. So we're gonna bring it to them. Improve adult digital literacy. We partner with Goodwill to host the digital skills courses, so they use our computers when we're not using them, and they come in and they teach the classes. We continue to offer our one-on-one tech times, so that is a program that people will sign up for, and typically it's a small issue, but for anybody who's struggled with their smartphone or using their iPad, I know nobody in this room has issues with that. They just sign up, and we've got people who can get them through that. And then Overdrive, we have Libby. Libby is a big app for us, but a lot of folks struggle using it because it's an app. So we started classes on teaching them how to use Libby, so that gives them access to ebooks and e-audiobooks through our Libby app. Strengthen community connectedness. A lot of the folks that we talk to always continue to talk about silos, and people get so focused on what it is that they're doing, they forget that there might be other organizations trying to do the same thing. So we're trying to bring people together. Some of the things we were able to do, we created a community garden, so we're going to be planting and hopefully expanding on that program. We have the Food for Fines program, so we hopefully will be able to do that again shortly, where folks, instead of paying their fines, they would bring in canned goods, and then we donated them to the Old Town Mission. We had story times outside at some of our parks. We used the Verde Valley Audubon Society at Garrison, and then we did, the VFW did one at the Veterans Memorial Park, so we're trying to get kids out and experience what we have. I have the good fortune of participating in the Mingus Union High School Connect leadership team. So that's trying to get involved with Mingus, what's happening there, understand what's happening there, and then figure out how we can, as the city and as the library, how we can help. We hosted a Frank Talk, which is the library's version of a TED Talk on water in the Southwest. So we had a professor from Arizona State University come up and talk about pros and cons of what we're doing. And we also hosted a Writers of the Orphan Train program, which had nearly 100 people attend. Orphan Train, somebody wrote a book, and then we did a presentation on it, and very well attended. Engage community members not now utilizing the library. Basically, we need to market. I've come to understand we have amazing programs. It's just a matter of getting folks to know about them and understand what they mean. So we do the Inside Cottonwood. I'm able to host that bi-monthly. You can see we have a new logo now. It looks similar to City of Cottonwood's logo, so you can tell we're still part of the same team, but we have a little bit of a different look to it. We updated our brochure. We also created that one. We have an English and a Spanish version, and the Library Advisory Board's really been helpful in distributing that out to the community. One of our local apartment complexes, they manage 5 different apartment complexes, has been able to put that into their introductory packets, so people are getting to know us. Attending community events has been very important. A list of community events that we were able to attend, and the Cottonwood Christmas Parade, of course, is always a big one for the library. And our Bookmarks, our nonprofit that supports us, was able to help us. We purchased a year's worth of advertisements in both of the local newspapers, so getting the word out on programs and what we're doing in the newspapers is very critical. So, what's next? I created this just before we kind of all shut down. So, with the understanding that that our world is changing and we might have some new normals, we will continue to adapt and change with what this community needs. If jobs become an issue, we have resources for that. If space becomes an issue, we can provide that too. So we want to be flexible. We want to adapt with the community as it adapts, and we want to be there every step of the way. So I tell our staff all the time that since I've been the director, that's all we've been doing is changing and adapting. So it's the new normal for us, and we anticipate to continue that. So thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, let me know.
Any questions for Mr. Bigelow?
Mr. Mayor, can I just add one thing that he left out, and I'm kind of disappointed. It just hit me. He talked about his community events. One of the events that the library participated was in the trick or treat that the PD hosted.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think you won the trophy over some trash talk from another department. Is that correct?
I've tried to put that behind me. I've tried to be the bigger person. But yes, we got first place a couple of times, and that was over a certain department that thought that they were superior, and they were quickly put in their place.
Which other department was that, since we're talking about it?
Well, let's just say I think he's the only person wearing a white shirt today, but I don't want to call anybody out. I didn't see Rudy.
Mayor, can I just ask a question
please.
and then a comment? You mentioned the parade, and as one of the parade announcers every year, I enjoy seeing what the library, what float you're going to do. It's always fun. I know you guys spend a lot of work on that, but I do enjoy that. Just a quick question. I was at the court, at the clerk's office yesterday, and there were folks claiming that they can't print from our library. Are our kiosks open for the public to be able to access the internet and print, or is that something with the pandemic we're distancing
With
from?
the pandemic, right now, currently, we're only open for our curbside services, so we are not allowing public into the building at this point in time. Printing is obviously a huge need when we are open, but that's as we phase through this, that will be one of the phases that we get back into.
And then that makes perfect sense. I just wasn't sure.
Sure.
Thank you.
I just want to say kudos to you and your staff. It's great to see how the library has transitioned, and just thank you for being the leader over there. And I know you have a great board that you work with as well, but thank you to all of you.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Anything else?
I would like to know what coding is.
Me too. So coding, a lot of what they'll say is a lot of the jobs that are current right now have to do with your computers, and computers run on code. So numbers of 001100. So there are games, and we actually have a volunteer who works remotely for a company out of Southern California, but chooses to live here. But coding is part of his profession. So he's actually volunteering to teach kids the basics of coding and what that looks like through free programming that he's been aware of and knows. So for us, that's a complete win-win to have an expert on. I'm not going to be able to teach you coding. That's going to go south real quick. But if we have a local expert who's going to volunteer their time to help our kids learn, it's amazing.
Thank you. I think that's great. As long as I don't have to.
Right. Yeah, turning it on and off is about, that's as good as we can get.
That's hard.
All right.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for the presentation. Okay, next under new business, we have ordinance number 677, amending the zoning map of the city of Cottonwood, Arizona for parcels of land totaling approximately 5.78 acres located at 840 South Main Street. Assessors parcel number 406-04-040, 842 South Main Street, APN 406-06-029M, and APN 406-06-364G, so as to revert the present zoning of PAD, planned area development, to the previous zoning of R3, multiple family residential, R2, single family, multiple family residential, R1, single family residential, and C1 light commercial. First reading. How are you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Good evening. Scott Ellis, Community Development Director. So ordinance number 677 to revert a PAD zoning for Skyline Apartments. If you remember, many years ago, this project started in 2013 with a request to rezone these properties. Many of them, there's really only a couple parcels, 3 parcels, but it had numerous zonings across them. One of the stipulations in the original approval with the zoning from Planning Commission and City Council was that they had 2 years to submit construction drawings and get the project started. That 2 years expired on the original zoning. However, they came back to the Planning Commission and City Council in 2018 to ask for another 2 years to do it. That request was approved by the Commission and by the Council. That has now expired. There's been no indication from the property owner to move forward. We did send them the required notification that this would revert back to the previous zoning, and they had no objection to it. Health issues in the family from the parents, the original owners, has basically been what delayed this project and never got it off the ground. If you do remember, the rezoning of this project did create quite a stir with neighboring subdivision who protested. However, it was still approved. So this basically does revert the zone back to R1, R2, R3, and C1 as it had originally sat prior to the rezoning to PAD. The stipulation did read that it would revert back without legislative action. However, that's not allowed under state law, so we have to bring it back before the council to make that change. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Just the ownership of the parcels remain the same, correct?
Yes.
There's no change there or anticipated there?
No, so my understanding is an elder father owned the property with his wife. He has since passed, and the wife is not doing very well. She may have passed by now, I'm not sure, and it's going to fall into the hands of the children. Mm-hmm. And they're not dealing with all these health issues. They're not in any position to move forward.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions from council on this? No. Okay, well, this is just the first reading, so we'll bring it back here in a couple weeks, next month, I guess, for a vote. Right?
What's that? Sorry.
We'll bring it back here next month for a vote.
Yes,
right?
it'll come back for the second reading.
Okay. All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Clerk, it's now your turn to read ordinance number 677 by title only. Good luck.
Ordinance number 677, an ordinance of the mayor and city council of the city of Cottonwood, Yavapai County, Arizona, amending the zoning map of the city of Cottonwood, Arizona for parcels of land totaling approximately 5.78 acres located at 840 South Main Street, APN 406-04-040, 842 South Main Street, APN 406-06029M, and APN 406-06364G, so as to revert the present zoning of PID planned area development to the previous zoning of R3 multiple family residential, R2 single family multiple family residential, R1 single family residential, and C1 light commercial. Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Next, under new business, we have proposed zoning ordinance amendment regarding the regulation of tiny houses. Evening, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I was having some trouble getting the PowerPoint up. Matt, I don't know if you can help out with that. Gary Davis with Community Development. This is a follow-up to a discussion you had with staff back in February of this year regarding regulation of tiny houses. And we have since taken it back and taken another look at what other jurisdictions are doing, what other approaches are being used. And we found in Pima County an interesting way of doing it. What they did was they didn't change their zoning code at all. What they did was put a page on their website that says, tiny house is anything under 400 square feet. If it's on wheels, in a chassis, it's an RV. We treat it as an RV. You can put it wherever you can put an RV, recreational vehicle. If it's on wheels, you bring it from off-site, but you take it off the wheels, fix the chassis permanently to a foundation. It's placed where you can place a manufactured or mobile home in those zones. And if it's a stick built, you build it on site from the ground up, or if you bring in components as a modular home that also meets residential zoning codes or building codes, then it can be placed where site-built homes can be placed. So that's the approach we're taking. We are proposing to codify it to make it clear that that's how we would break it down. But basically the approach is tiny house is under 400 square feet, whether it's a vehicle or a structure, and whether it's used for temporary or permanent residential use. So again, first type would be recreational vehicle type, has the wheels on it. Second would be manufactured home, be treated as a manufactured home. And third would be site-built. So to give an example, first type, you bring it onto the property on wheels. That's an RV. Where can you put it? An RV park. That's where it's allowed. You can park it in a yard for 2 weeks temporarily, but basically those go in RV parks. And we would codify it to make that pretty clear. Second type, bring it in from off-site. But you take the wheels off, take the chassis and affix it to a permanent foundation, then that would be that would be allowed as a primary residence in a zone that allows manufactured homes. So R4 zone, MH zone could be the primary residence. Could also be a guest house in the zones, in the agricultural zones, the commercial residential zones, where guest houses are now allowed as a permitted use. And would also be allowed in the AR20, R1 zones, where guest houses are currently allowed as a conditional use. So to take a conditional use permit going through the Planning and Zoning Commission to place one there. The third type, build it from the ground up. That's considered a site-built house. And that could be a primary residence. And this is the way it is right now, by the way, because the city of Cottonwood does not have a minimum size for a residential house. So you could put one in a primary residence as a primary residence right now, in the agriculture and residential zones. You can put it as a guest house in the agriculture zones in the CR. And again, where guest houses are conditional uses, AR20 and R1, it could go there as well. And site-built homes would differentiate from the other types. This third type would be one that's built to International Residential Code, and that would include factory-built homes, which are modular homes that are, you have pieces that are shipped in from off-site, but it's not pulled on a chassis. So those would meet our International Residential Code. We did have a question, too, that came in this morning from Brenda Odom. Her question was, shipping containers are being used in building in a structure in Old Town Cottonwood. My question for the City Council is, can shipping containers be used in constructing tiny and smaller homes? In other words, homes that are not as tiny homes, but fairly small homes. And the answer to that is yes. That could fall under the site-built category. That would just be a component of the site-built construction of a house. Obviously, they would have to go through permitting and show plans and submit to full inspections to make sure it's built to code. But yes, that is a possibility, whether it's a tiny home or a larger unit. The IRC, the International Residential Code, has an appendix now in the 2018 edition for tiny houses. And what that does is where you have a site-built home that would otherwise meet IRC, it has some allowances for steeper steps, lower headroom in lofts and things like that. Some allowances that could be made for a smaller type of site-built tiny house like this.
And those only apply, excuse me for interrupting, those only apply for certain square footage of home, isn't that
Yes,
correct?
under 400 square feet. That's where we took the 400 square feet threshold, and that's also, by the way, where we got the term tiny house, because they call it tiny house, not tiny home. So I've been trying to train myself to say tiny house instead of tiny home, just to keep it consistent with that, and that's why it reads that way in the code. Definition of guest house, we would not change that, but I just wanted to remind you what our requirements are for guest houses. It's a detached accessory building, a separate living area to be used by the occupants of the premises, family members, and their guests. And also, the use shall be clearly secondary and subordinate in size and location to the primary residence and meet all other standards, but not be offered as a separate rental unit. So this wouldn't be a separate unit on the site. If somebody wanted to put a tiny house on the property, it would have to meet all these standards too. It would have to be subordinate in size and location to the main house. So the proposed zoning amendments that we're talking about really has three components. Number one, the general provisions section would contain a description of those three types of tiny houses that I described to you. Makes that differentiation. In the definition section, we would add a new definition of tiny house, which would basically be 400 square feet, residential, permanent residential or temporary residential, and it could be a structure or a vehicle, because an RV is technically a vehicle. And in each zoning classification, we would make it clear that a tiny house could either be allowed as a primary residence or guest house in either the permitted or conditional uses section of each zone. So again, those are the three types, basically. That concludes my presentation. We're looking for a little guidance here before we take this back to Planning Commission, and eventually you would see it before considering an ordinance on it.
I had a question, sir, on you mentioned in there that if it needs to be subordinate in use and size to the main residence, not to be used as a rental property. How does that conflict with the state's position on Airbnbs? What would prevent somebody from building a site-built tiny house and then listing it on Airbnb, which I think is a lot of our fear, in that we would have, you know, a surge of tiny homes that sort of litter our neighborhoods.
Well, a guest house shall not be offered as a separate rental unit. And so I think, and we might get an opinion on this, but that might be something that prevents them from renting that out as a vacation rental.
Okay.
Just that. As far as, now if it's a vacant lot, somebody moves a tiny house onto it, meets all the requirements, I don't believe we would have, again, our legal counsel might weigh in on this, but I don't believe we would be able to prevent that.
Okay.
We'd be able to regulate that to some extent with newer legislation that came down recently, but that wouldn't be as easy to regulate as if it was a separate guest house situation.
Okay.
I don't believe.
And Mr. Mayor, that's a good point, and it's one I'd be happy to look into.
Yeah, I mean, I believe as it's written, we can't supersede what the state has told us. So anybody could put that on there and very well rent it out as an Airbnb until the state law changes.
Mr. Mayor, if I can add and maybe help Steve or point him in the right direction, I believe that you can't differentiate between long-term and short-term rental. Here, you're not allowed to rent out a guest house built in these zones. So this is not the same as a multifamily residential. It's not the same as a primary resident, but you're not allowed to do short-term, long-term, any kind of rental for this building, this guest house to be built in these zones. But again, I'm just pointing in a direction. I wouldn't say that's for absolute sure.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I do want to let you know that in our zoning ordinance right now, it does say that guest houses cannot be rented out. That is one of the requirements and provisions. However, with that change in state law, there's been a lingering question on if we have that legal ability to restrict that anymore. And it's been the consensus that we've talked about that it's not likely that we can. So it is a concern that unfortunately we just can't address the way we want to.
Right. Okay. All right.
So you can see there's some diversity of opinion on that point, and we'll have to hopefully nail that down.
Right.
And Mr. Mayor, we'll have an answer for you when we come back through the process.
Right. And I know it's largely up to the state, and I think we're all hopeful for change there. I can tell you guys have taken a step back and really thought more about this, I think, to address some concerns that Vice Mayor had, Councilmember Holtz had, and other council members had. I think it's a great approach. I'm curious if this satisfies some of the concerns you had from earlier.
Yeah, I had a quick meeting with Gary and Scott and Ron yesterday, going over this. Pardon me. One question popped up in my mind after the meeting in regard to guest house. If you build a guest house on your property, do they have to have direct access by road or driveway to that house, or the main structure, the main house, has a driveway, presumably a carport, garage, parking? What about the guest house? If the guest house is located, for example, behind the main residence on the same property, do they have to be able to drive a vehicle to the guest house, or the fact that you have parking for the residents, does that qualify for the guest house?
I'll let Scott take over here. It looks like he's got something to say.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council, we do have that requirement in our guest house ordinance that they do have to provide another parking space for that guest house, and they also have to access it from the main driveway. They can't necessarily come in, build a new driveway just for that guest house. They have to share the existing, and they do have to accommodate another parking space for it.
It's okay. So you could park in the main parking, but do you have to be able to then park by the guest house? That's what I'm trying to clarify.
You don't necessarily have to park next to the guest house, but you do somewhere on the property have to be able to accommodate another parking spot.
Right, okay.
Yes.
But you don't necessarily have to be able to drive from the street and park in the general area of the
No, you
guest
don't have to be right adjacent to it.
Okay.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments from council? Are they heading in the right direction?
It addresses all my concerns 100%. I see there's still an ability to put a manufactured home in a non-manufactured neighborhood as a guest house, subordinate in size and location. But with a conditional use permit, I don't see any problem with that. That allows neighbors to have a say and for it to go through the process. So it's been very well thought out. You guys did a really good job, great presentation. I think it's clean. I think it's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I think you have our blessing to kick it over to the Planning and Zoning Commission and see what they think of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, item 4 is presentation, discussion, and possible direction to staff regarding a proposed wayfinding sign program for the city.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. So what we're looking at tonight is the next level of information. We've had this discussion with you at a work study session regarding wayfinding signs. At that meeting, we did get direction from you to proceed with it. We've had discussions with both the Planning Commission and the Historic Preservation Commission and got their input as to what they like, don't like, a couple of discussion topics that I'll go into a little bit more this evening. But generally, wayfinding signs are just a community identity to locate where you're at, where you've arrived, and to assist people, whether it be residents or visitors throughout the community. So there are different types of different scales of signage that we'll be looking at, the largest being what would be a entry or gateway sign. We're sort of skipping over that part of it and going to the smaller scale pedestrian and local vehicular street signage. Let me get to that. So as it says, it's a system of public signs, and one of the things we're trying to do, I think the bottom line through all of this is two things: not to have identical signage citywide. We don't want every sign, both civic signs and private business signs, to all be identical, but to have some type of a common theme, a common identification. So when you are in Cottonwood, you know you're in Cottonwood. It'll just add a little bit of that exposure. Providing a sense of place and establishing community identity, providing a unified image, and like I said, unified, not identical. Welcome and orientation. The welcome for the visitors coming into town, perhaps somebody just driving through town, if they're going to one of our local Old Town District or wherever they're coming, as well as for the citizens here, to give them a sense of ease as they're traveling through the community. The needs assessment is basically just an inventory of what we have out there now. Perhaps there are some good examples, perhaps there are some not so good examples. But basically taking the existing theme that we already have, a lot of that with the river rock and rusted metal theme is a growing style, yet it blends in, brings in the new architecture with the old historic. So as we go through this, I'll identify some of the different types of signs. This level of detail does not go into cost or an exact design. I think what we're looking for tonight and then would bring is, are we on the right path here? Are there any questions, anything that we need to address? if we're moving forward with this, when we do come back, there will be, renderings of specific Cottonwood signage, as well as costs that would be associated with the different types of signs. The gateway signage, like I said, is generally a larger where you're entering the community on the higher speed roadways, gathering the attention that this is where you've arrived into the city. Directional signs going down to a smaller scale would either be pedestrian-oriented or vehicular-oriented. Within that, the pedestrian-oriented, there's different types, whether it be something that is on a freestanding pole or attached to an existing light pole or some existing utility pole, or separately in a kiosk that would have different identifying information. So the directional vehicular sign would be on a larger scale. This could be on the collector streets throughout the community. Because the traffic speeds are greater, signage would be a little bit larger. The directional for the pedestrian, I think the focus initially is to look at the Old Town area. That's where the pedestrian activity is, and for the need for identification of the businesses and directions. The kiosk sign would provide a little bit more detailed information of specific businesses, maps, and directing people to what would be in that smaller neighborhood. The vehicle-oriented directional signs. I have some examples here of, like I said, some good examples and not so good examples. I don't like saying bad. And what we're looking at doing would be to consolidate some of what we see out there now with a common theme. I keep coming back to that, but I think that the common theme, and along with, as you look at some of these, and they're ones we drive by all the time, there's not really a coordinated effort. There's some, state highway signs, there's local businesses, there's municipal signage, a little bit of everything. And a few more examples of, so most of these that, let me go back one, you can see the one sign in Old Town. That would be the top left. There's a lot of stuff going on there. So I think the goal would be to where can we consolidate some that's already out there, what works, what doesn't work, what do we need to identify, minimize and state more clearly the signage that we have. I just wanted to show this to you. This is my favorite color, blue. It just sort of, really did a lot. But
Blends in with the sky.
Sarcasm aside, this is what we're trying to, as we look at, this is an existing sign or structure that is out there. So I think we have some little work to do on with ADOT, as well as just what we're getting direction from council and the different commissions.
That's the real deal?
Yeah, this is.
It is blank, Mr. Mayor. You guys aren't, you're seeing it correctly. There is no lettering on it.
Yeah, but it's a pretty color blue, isn't it?
Yeah, blends in with the sky. Maybe that's why I've never seen it. Yeah. Did you know? Yeah, go back one slide. I think it's worth pointing out.
One more?
Yeah, one more. Lower left, that is a campaign sign for Linsky from a former campaign.
You still haven't taken that down?
Does everybody get equal time now?
What's that?
Does everybody get equal time?
Right.
So for the pedestrian areas, we're looking at Old Town, the visitor attractions, municipal facilities in the Old Town area, and the different business districts and neighborhoods. So once again, a little sign of there's a lot going on. That's one of the goals that we would have. When I talk about something being a common theme, yet not identical, I thought this was a good example to show. You've got one on the left there that would be more directed towards vehicular traffic. The one on the right is more pedestrian. They've got difference of colors, minor little different details in them, but yet you can tell that they're the same theme, the same city. Okay, then going into the different types of, vehicular, directional, and the parking signs. Anything that would be larger, generally located where you could see it from the traffic lane, not in the way of the pedestrian sidewalks. The two on the right would be more pedestrian oriented, something that you would see, and whether it be on its own pole, a new pole that would be established just for that purpose, or utilizing an existing street light pole or some other structure that's readily available. Just some different examples here of different signage. The Old Town District, we're sort of looking at for, sort of the low-hanging fruit. We've already got historical preservation, talking about signs in Old Town. We have discussion or requests from business owners in Old Town to assist them in signage. But yet we also don't want to, like I'm saying, we want to minimize and clean up some that's out there. We've identified 3 locations, one up by the old jail, to get people to move up towards that direction, and then there's also businesses, around the corner. That would be at both the north end and the south end to try to get people away from just the center of the block. We identified Pima intersection there. There are businesses existing and proposed on that direction. Pinal did not have the same businesses located off of Main Street, so we thought 3 locations in that area would be a good place to start with the pedestrian signage. We currently have the kiosk in Old Town. There's one in front of the old jail that's existing, been there a little while. There's another proposed for out in the vicinity somewhere in the front of the clubhouse. I don't know if an exact footprint has been on the corner. So I think the rendering here is going to be the top left will be very similar to what you would see out on the corner right here. Some of the discussion that we had, and I want to talk about the differences in the pole sign versus the kiosk. Pole signs, a lot of discussion was centered around, are we going to allow individual businesses to identify the name of their business on the sign? Or is this going to be used for municipal purposes to direct people to parking, city facilities, ball fields, or will, if we do allow individual businesses to locate their signage, how do we administer that? Currently, we have a sign plan for someone that's doing an A-frame sign out at the street. There would be an application process. And then they would place a sign on the pole. Let me back up a little bit. We would dictate to them how the sign could be constructed, whether it be their own sign or whether it be we control that signage by color and give them the font and the specific specs, and they put that on the sign. Or another side of that was some people wanted it just to say something like shopping district or restaurants or some generic terminology that did not identify specific businesses. So I think that's, when we get to the end here, one of the questions we have for you is getting some input from you on how to address that topic.
Excuse me. So in other words, let me ask you a question. So we have these signs that dictate certain businesses, restaurants and such. Are those businesses going to pay for that?
Yes, we'd have an application where they would like have a one-time application fee. We would give them the specs that they would have to take to a sign company. They would have their own sign made based on that specific spec that we gave them, and then it would be installed by a city crew.
So on that sign that this person bought and paid for, they're going to be the only one on that sign pole?
There would probably be more like, if I can go back to, there might be 3, 4, or 5. Like here, there's 3 on one side, 2 on the other. Or on the third example on the right, where you have 6 different, in this case, it's all municipal.
So
that
in a street like going up and down here in Old Town, how many poles would it take to accommodate every business, for example?
If I can add, we do not plan to do it for businesses on the street where the sign is. So so businesses on Main Street would not get a sign on Main Street. So we have some further down Main Street this way that point to businesses that are off the main drive, and that would really be the idea thing is, again, if you guys give us this direction, we would allow people who aren't on that street to put up their name or a business on there pointing them down a side street. The businesses on Main Street already have their signs on Main Street.
So, okay. So will we have a sign pole for each, shall we say, roadway that veers from the main road? I mean, in other words, how many signs are we going to have? And I guess the idea is not to make it look like a picket fence because you can't read anything anyway.
Mm-hmm. I think the focus would be at the intersections, not mid-block. And so we would be looking at a maximum of 5 through, this here. Initially, we were starting with 3 to see how to get it initiated and started.
And our goal would actually be to reduce some signage. As you saw some of the bad examples from Main Street, on one pole, we had 2 signs for our bus system. We had a bus stop and the cat sign on the same pole. So we'll be doing the inventory, looking through that, and hopefully we'll actually reduce some of the redundant signage and I think hopefully beautify it, make it look more uniform. So our goal is to declutter, not increase clutter. And we think we can do that and still do off-road, off Main Street signage.
Okay, thank you.
So we're not talking about the sign toppers tonight, but I did want to show you, through the Historic Preservation Commission, we have worked on sign toppers, and they are existing in Old Town already. So this wayfinding plan would just sort of be to continue on what we've already started with some common themed signage. So here are some questions for you moving forward. Do you want us to, are you happy with the direction that you see things going? What are the questions you may have? And do you want us to move forward with this and come back to you with more details as far as specific signage of what it would look like and renderings for the directional signs, both geared to vehicle or pedestrian? And do you like the pole sign concept in general, that we would do that not just in the Old Town area, but then expand that citywide, where there would be main intersections that might need or would be assisted to identify businesses or business districts or municipal facilities off of whatever the main road was. And then the question about, do you want the individual business to be identified on the sign, or are these signs only for the use of municipal purposes and directional to districts or general locations and not specific businesses? The kiosk signage would have the individual businesses listed. There's a changeable map in there with the different addresses. So all the businesses in the Old Town area would be advertised in the kiosk with their name and a location. The question is more, do we want that same exposure on the pole signs themselves?
Okay, great. Let's open it up for comments.
I like the concept and I like the ideas. And if we do have a kiosk, why couldn't we start with that? And if we needed to proceed with the other, I know that some of the businesses probably wouldn't prefer that, assuming they pay for it. Secondly, what does this do to the tent signs? How would they be involved or not?
I'm sorry.
The tent signs, the A-frames?
That's a separate proposal that we have. We haven't considered that as part of this proposal. That's something that we already have actively that we.
So you could have both?
For, I guess you could have both. With the A-frame signs now, they have to be located on the property where the business is. So, for instance, somebody off of Main Street could not bring their A-frame sign out to Main Street legally.
Mr. Mayor, while she's pausing, we did receive, I want to make sure you all got a copy of a comment from some of our business owners in the community. So I just wanted to recognize that you guys did receive those comments.
I'll read it to the public. I meant to before I turn it over to council. But we'll hear comments from council and then make sure to read this into the public.
So I'm a big fan of signs and signage, but I also like the concerted effort. I don't like the clutter because, it's just more of a distraction and doesn't accomplish the purpose of letting folks get to where they want to go. As far as individual, I'd have to think more about allowing the individual businesses to have pole signs. I do think it's important that we do have, like you said, the 3 pole signs where we say, here are restaurants available, or, it's for those businesses that are not on Main Street. I would like to make sure, especially because we can't have the A-frames, pointing that way. I do want folks to be able to get to those businesses, but I also want us to be thinking long-term. And I haven't checked our kiosk by the jail recently, but I know the last time I looked at it, the last time we talked about signage, there were businesses that were not updated. We do have turnover in Old Town, so I don't know, and that's, I'm all about if we can help share the cost for this. Business is something that is, signage is a marketing expense there, so I don't know if we can try to keep that kiosk more up to date, and especially if we're putting in a new one. I really like the kiosk. I think it's a great, efficient way to find all of the different businesses and a little map, and it's really nicely done. So I'm excited that we're putting in another one. But I think there we have specific information, and if we can keep that one updated, then maybe if we have guiding for the other three pole signs here in Old Town, then I'd really like to see more signage in the rest of the city as well. That's with that uniform, museums, library, or different things like that. Couple of things, and I've harped on this before. Every time I get a chance to talk to anybody from ADOT, I do try to plug Cottonwood on the McGuireville exit. So I don't know if that's something that is if you're ever having conversations with ADOT, we don't have a Cottonwood sign off of the 17 at the McGuireville exit. And so that's something that I think is important, because that is another artery to get into Old Town, especially if we're moving forward with Verde Connect. So just kind of putting that in your ear as well. And then I don't know if we should include maybe Bruce Morrow or somebody from transportation in the committee that's part of this, because a lot of the signage, like you said, maybe we need to look at from a cat or lynx standpoint, because like as our city manager pointed out, we've got duplication there. That's it. I love it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just respond. I'm going to put my neck out a little bit here. We went and updated the kiosk recently. After our last meeting, we got the same feedback that it wasn't up to date, but we'll double check that because you're absolutely right, it does change.
And thank you. I haven't been out there. I haven't looked for months, so thank you for updating it.
Mr. Hulse.
I would agree with Councilmember Henry as far as the kiosks are concerned. One on the south end, one on the north end of Old Town, listing the different businesses. Pardon. I would appreciate if we could charge them for their name on the kiosk to cut down on some of our expense. And it would be their responsibility then, if they do go out of business, to remove that sign or be billed by the city for the removal, and so that we're not continually having to pay our employees to go out and clean up other people. We don't know when somebody's business is going to go away for whatever reason. And as Councilmember Henry pointed out, rather than us trying to keep up with it, if we're going to keep up with it, we need to get some reimbursement for it when they leave. If they're leaving and they pull their sign when they leave, good, no problem. They don't have to worry. Then the new tenant, if they want their name in there, would kind of put it in. On the post signs even through Old Town, I would like to see, as again, Councilmember Henry, restaurants, tasting rooms, wherever, but not the signs, the wayfaring signs on the street should not be listing a whole bunch of businesses. They can do that at the two kiosks, especially for Old Town. The idea is to get them out of their vehicle, get them walking on Old Town. So to me, it's kind of like the mall concept. I walk into the mall. I've never been there. I don't know where a store is. I go to the kiosk in the atrium, and I find the location. Then I know how to get there. And I kind of like that idea in Old Town, and I like the displays that you've put in here as far as what they will look like. I think that's very attractive. And the other wayfaring keeps it simpler. And driving, especially in Old Town, you can't be looking at individual businesses. If you want to go to Old Town, then you need to get out of your car and go to Old Town. At least that's how I would perceive it. The rest of the city, we need to have wayfaring also. Where are the grocery stores? Where is the library? Where is the rec center? Where is the hospital? Those things are the important things that we need to provide throughout the city.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask Councilmember Hulse a question, follow-up question? So clear on the Old Town general signs, perfect. What about outside of Old Town? We currently have a couple of wayfinding signs that point to businesses off Main Street, closer to Safeway, down in those areas. Would you be okay with business names on those signs, or would you still just prefer general areas?
No, once we get out of Old Town, and again, going back to the business paying for and maintaining the sign,
okay,
I think is good for the major businesses. I don't know how many of the smaller independent businesses are going to want to put a sign up, because I don't know how, but that would be up to them if we keep it to a minimum. I don't want to see a bunch of clutter. I agree again with Councilmember Henry. Outside of Old Town, we do need more direction because people are driving. So they need a larger sign to say, I need to go to the hospital, I need to go to Safeway or Fry's or what have you. How do I get there? And those signs on the main arteries could be pointing to the direction you would go to get to those locations.
Councilmember Hodeggy, did you have some more comments to share?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay. And Councilmember Nairn, what are your thoughts?
Pretty much the same as the last two. I like the kiosks and the poles, and I like the idea of keeping the business names on the kiosks and not on the poles and have those be very generic. And I do agree that we need to do something that is more uniform with the signage around the city.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
As far as going outside of Old Town and the vehicular traffic signs, pointing to areas and different places like the, Old Town, shopping, different things. But I also saw some signs that were out there for specific businesses. One of them pointed to lawyer's title. I don't have any problem with any of those. Getting closer into Old Town, I agree with everybody pretty much on the kiosks anchoring either side. Just like when you walk into a mall and kind of stand there, what do they have to offer here? As far as the pole signs, those are also geared towards pedestrians, I believe. And in this time especially, I think we need to be a partner to our businesses. Having a sign up there that points down there and says restaurant, I think is too generic. I think we should have a template and allow those businesses that are off of Main Street, because everybody they come down to Old Town, they're gonna walk up and down both sides of Main Street. Everything there is clearly obvious. Their signage is right there. They don't need any help. It works for them. They're in a great location. But we're growing and hope we grow some more. And we have some businesses off of the main street, and I'd like to have at least somebody walking can see the name. And I think having a template and having them pay for that sign, something tasteful. Well, I said right here at the corner, pointing down there for Three Kings Hasbar. She made a statement on here. I think it should have that name because that just kind of lends some interest. I kind of look at signs and names, and that kind of determines whether I'm interested in going or not. So they're going to be in Main Street, up and down each side of the sidewalk. I'd like to at least let them know, hey, this is over here. Old Town Center for the Arts is over there. We have some art galleries over here. And let them design a sign with their name on there and try to entice people out to their businesses. So I kind of feel strongly about that. And that's us kind of helping to be a partner for our businesses who are more in need of that now than ever.
You're furiously taking notes. I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh, that's
Well, I just want to say I'm glad to see that we're finally going to run this to ground, because I know we've been talking about it for years and years. And we all know there's a great need. It's always a fun exercise to invite guests from out of town who've never been here before and have them drive you around and follow all the directional signage. And it's amazing how quickly you can get lost trying to follow those signs. Anyway, there's a need. We know that. I think it's great that we're looking at uniform signage. I think the wayfinding signs here in Old Town, I'm glad that we're all pausing and trying to be a little bit more thoughtful about how we provide that signage. We have a lot to offer down here, and it's a great walkable community. We're trying to really encourage folks to walk around. We're doing a lot of improvements now on our trails, trailheads, and I think it's important that we have signage that directs folks, because we have a gem here. We need those sales tax dollars, and so we need visitors. Providing them a really good experience is important, and part of that, of course, is making sure they don't get lost when they come down here, and that they feel welcome. So I would need to see evidence that we're going to declutter Main Street.
Correct.
I really want to see some sort of evidence that we're going to actually remove some of the clutter and provide more thoughtful and tasteful signage. I think that the businesses that we have off Main Street could really benefit from having their business name listed. And I would be okay with, obviously, them paying for that sign and being responsible for the maintenance of it. We don't have that many businesses currently off Main Street, so I don't feel like that would clutter up the poles too much. I think down the road in another 5-10 years, if we're blessed enough to have a lot of activity off of Main Street, then we may need to consider, art gallery, bar, restaurant this way, winery, tasting room this way. When there's more activity on those side streets, but currently there's really not. And I think that those businesses could use a little support. The kiosk signs are great. I think they're tasteful, they're attractive. I see people studying them, to get oriented here in Old Town. I don't think it's expensive to change out the paper that's in there that lists the businesses. So I think it's just the way the city can show partnership and support, because obviously we need those businesses to survive, to help our city coffers. So I don't see it being a big expense. I think that we can just do an assessment, maybe even have the Old Town Association help out with that quarterly to see what kind of business churn we've had in Old Town, and if there are businesses that have moved on or relocated, or new businesses that have come in, that we can just update that sign on a quarterly or biannual basis without a big expense to the city. I think that those are my thoughts. I hope I answered all your questions.
I think so. Do you want me to read that letter, or did you?
I would love for you to. That'd be great.
Okay. So this is the correspondence we received this afternoon, about 4:30. I'm speaking for some of the businesses located off Main Street, as well as those not contained in the bridge-to-bridge section of Main Street. There are quite a few of us, and we would greatly appreciate any tasteful, slatted pole signage and kiosk signage combination that could direct business our way. We're glad for our friends in the 4-block radius that may not need exposure, but we hope the city appreciates that we all contribute to Old Town with our diversity and our sales tax dollars. We see that there is much discussion on these topics on kiosk versus tasteful pole signage that many towns and cities in the U.S. and worldwide use in their historic districts. Many cities and towns allow individual businesses' names to be placed on signage, and many of them are very tastefully done. I'm sure community development has provided some examples. We hope that Cottonwood would allow this as well, under the direction of specific layout and design to be uniform according to the city. Kiosks would help generally only in the immediate 4-block radius once walking. It would be very difficult to read those while driving. However, pole signs generally are more beneficial while driving as well as walking. COVID has affected us all very much, but in particular those off Main or beyond bridge to bridge. In general, any new signage would help us all. As for funding, we think most small businesses that we speak of would be willing to pay some price for this privilege. When we think of all the businesses no longer with us, such as Muse Bistro, Abby's, Thai Palace, and the list goes on, we recognize how this small amount of signage may have helped them survive. Many of us put our life savings into our businesses. Please help us survive. There was a list of about a dozen businesses on there. And also, that was from Denise Kelly, and a special comment from Robert of Mannheim Gallery. I believe that they wish to extend the district to where the art galleries reside, then providing signage that designates that makes sense. If they wish to distinguish the art and cultural district from the Old Town district with signage, then that is also acceptable to me. So those were the comments that we received this afternoon. Wanted to read those into the record.
I just had a question on these comments, because I think we're all in agreement that if a business is already on Main Street, we're not talking about any additional signage, but if they were on Main Street, they would still be able to be included in that kiosk, correct?
Correct, in the kiosk. Everybody would be on the kiosk.
And how far down does that go? Gail's Chocolates? Who knows?
I think it has ended here at the bridge.
So as far as what's in the kiosks, but that's an excellent point, because we did extend the Arts and Entertainment District all the way through to the 89A in Main Street. So I think maybe a topic for down the road might be, you know, extending signage, et cetera, out there. I think for purposes of now, though, I think, you know, the kiosk out here, you know, the bridge to the bridge that's referenced here and that you had mentioned already, is probably a good place to start. I had a question, because I think both the mayor and the vice mayor raised very good points. And I think we're all trying to balance signage, wanting to be good partners with our businesses, and business turnover, clutter on the sidewalks, et cetera. Are there other alternatives to the pole signs here in Old Town? I know that our corner buildings, apart from one, are private, that I know of, are privately owned, but I don't know if there's a way to work with, you know, to do signage on other buildings or some other solution to avoid several more poles in the street here in Old Town.
We could look at that. I do think we are trying to utilize, like if there is an existing street, a light post, we would utilize that with the bracket that went around. So you would not have another structure. There would be the signage off the side of it, but it wouldn't be a new structure, and we'd utilize those where we could.
So there is one at Pima. I just missed that that light pole, and I'll go look after, you know, later. So,
Mr. Mayor, Council, a couple things I want to comment on. One thing on what you just said, Councilmember Henry, is that would be considered off-premise sign if we started looking at using private property in other buildings, and that could potentially open a can of worms that nobody really probably wants to deal with. Not to say we can't look at it, but we'd have to be very careful on doing that, because it can create some big issues and even legal issues as far as allowing certain people to do it and not others. But it's definitely something we could see if it's been done somewhere else before. Another idea with the kiosk and how far that would extend, we are working with our Historic Preservation Commission to expand what would be the historic district. Also to do a historic overlay district. Right now it only encompasses the commercial area, but in time we actually had started doing it before this crisis came about, so it kind of put a halt on it. But we're looking to expand that to include further down Main Street, not as far as the Arts and Entertainment District, but further out from bridge to bridge. So that could be something that we look at as well, to include in that kiosk, to extend it at least in that district, if that's something council desires.
well, and thanks for that, Mr. Ellis. I have no interest in opening up a can of worms. I'd like to keep this simple. I don't want to derail a project. As the mayor said, we've been talking about this for years. We've had multiple meetings. I know the mayor and I have with different businesses through the years. This is something that I think is important to all of us, so I don't want to derail us or get us sidetracked or delay things. And then with that historic overlay, I do think this has to be an incremental discussion. Let's get started, and then later we can add to it. And I see our city manager nodding. I think that was very well said on your part, Mr. Ellis.
Thank you. And as you know, what's in front of you, this document is very draft form. So once we get direction from council, we can go in and fine tune it and then bring it back, let you look at it, see more of those details on what direction we're going to look at going, and then get that fine tuning in there and help with answer some of these questions in the direction that you're looking at.
Excellent. Thank you.
Do you have what you need so far to go forward?
I don't know that I can say 100%, because it sounds like there's a little bit of mixed feeling from council on putting names and not putting names. Correct. That's what we got from our Planning Commission and our Historic Preservation Commission as well. There was kind of mixed feelings on that. So unless I missed something, and if I did, I apologize. It sounds like council's a little bit mixed on that as well.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I can say, what we'll do for next step is we'll approve decluttering of Old Town signs. So we'll bring that back to see if that can be done. I think that's a good step before we make a decision on the others. And then I think what we'll do is we'll actually bring you back examples of what it would look like, and the marketing, the makeup, the design of it, and where a couple locations we might be thinking of putting it. Again, Some of that'll be administrative after you approve the, the design and those kinds of things. But let us, there's clearly not consensus, but I think that there is some consensus around decluttering, around consistent design and artwork and those kinds of things. I saw consistency on bathroom signs and ball field signs and state park signs. So I think we've got a little bit of direction. So we'll bring you back something to vote on it at some point.
And there is consistency on wanting this, so I hope that didn't come across that there wasn't, but it sounds like everybody on council wants it.
Right. Yeah, there's just a few things we need to iron out, but I think those details can come later. The overall design and the format of everything, I think we're all on board with. We want to see something happen. Like Councilmember Henry said, let's don't delay this any further. Let's keep moving forward. So thank you very much. Yeah. And thanks for your work with the other commissions too. I know it can be a bit challenging sometimes to try to herd cats, if you will. And being one of those cats for many years, I apologize for anything I've done to confuse you. Thanks.
Well, and Mr. Mayor, I'll just add as we wrap up, this reflects our business community. Business owners spoke at least one of the meetings, at the HBC meeting, I believe, and they were also in disagreement. So this is just a reflection of the community.
Right.
So we got it.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. Okay, next, item 5 is an update, discussion, and possible direction to staff regarding the 2020 Thunder Valley Rally event. Evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Jack Teal here with Parks and Recreation, or what I think I've been come to know by as the guy who lost the trunk or treat. So that one doesn't escape me very many times. So I'd like to talk tonight a little bit about the Thunder Valley Rally and our last committee meeting we had. And then hopefully get some direction from this council on what you guys would like to see in any events that we've got coming up. So on Tuesday, May 12th, we had met with a consolidated TVR committee. We still had some great representation there. We were joined by Councilmember Wilden. We had representation from the Old Town Association through Mitch Levy, who also wore his private business hat as the owner of Burning Tree Cellars down the street. We had Mr. Bob from Law Tigers. There is our primary sponsor, has some representation, and then Becca Riffle from Main Stage and Paula Woolsey with the Wine Consortium, as well as city staff in attendance there. So we brought a smaller consolidated group to talk about this, to try and get some direction on what we wanted to do and what we thought the event could handle this year. So through there, we talked about some of the questions we had. And some of the things we wanted to answer through that meeting is what should the focus have been for this year? What's the budget, and what are the time restrictions that we have in place to get this program up and going due to the current situation with COVID-19? So as we discussed and came through some of those things, it was brought up, well, what do we want the event to look like? And that got into, well, how large of a crowd are we going to be able to gather? And then it stemmed the conversation of what other events are happening around us and what have they been doing. So we reached out to get some answers from there. The Pecan Festival over in Camp Verde has decided that they're not going to do it. Clarkdale, you guys are aware, have decided that they're not going to do a lot of their programs. And then Sedona, I know that we've been working really closely with the Wine Consortium to see what they're going to do with Sedona Wine Festival this year. And they don't have an exact direction yet, but I do anticipate them coming out in early June with their direction. So it'll be interesting to see what they do too, because their event was one week right after Thunder Valley Rally. So that'll kind of lay out what that looks like. But as we started discussing those and the time restrictions on where we were versus where we needed to be for this event, I think the TVR committee kind of unanimously thought that it would be really hard pressed to do an event that wasn't at the same level last year without having brand reputation hurt through this. Knowing where we have and seeing the uptick, raising our ticket prices the way we did, not have our attendance drop at all. The committee was a little bit afraid that if we were to do something lesser than last year, it would hurt that brand reputation as well as the city's reputation with the program. And then our main sponsor, Law Tigers, had expressed their concern about, well, this is our livelihood, this is what we do, and if it doesn't represent us well, it's not great for our business. So they had brought up some different things that way as well. So it started stemming the conversation of, well, what could we do then? And this is really where we wanted to get council's input and direction on. These are just some ideas that we had talked about. Maybe doing a red, whites, and brews type festival. So it's a smaller scale, more community-oriented. It ties into the city's brand as the heart of Arizona's wine country and helps identify and align us there. And then it would feature some of those local, regional musicians that we had. We've been working with Mogi on throughout this entire process, and they've been so gracious to understand the needed flexibility with our programs right now. So they're still on board to come out and help us out with whatever we decide to do, if that's the route we'd like to take. Or if we wanted to keep it more motorcycle-oriented, we have the option to do something similar to TVR, or if this council would desire, whatever that looks like, as well as a Cottonwood bike night type event, where we know that all these people are going to be here for an event that style. So if we were to do something in Old Town that allowed them to park on the streets, those types of things, it would be a one-off event. We wouldn't really look to close down any of the streets there, just allow motorcycles to come down, take some of those parking spots as any normal person would be able to do it, and then create some local musicians, some band things here, whether it's on the corner or whether it's at the Old Town Activity Park, just to make sure that we're offering something for those people that are expecting it when they show up. So with that, really what we need is just the council's input and direction and what you guys would like to see, what your goals are for this program, what we'd like to see moving forward, and if we should hold an event on that same date, what that would look like, kind of what you guys are looking for, whether it's to attract tourism or whether at that point we're still going to be focusing on bringing our community back together. So through that, that's some of the questions I wanted to see if we can get some input direction on as we move forward through the process.
Very good. Yeah, it's interesting to see as we work our way through the pandemic, how many folks are just shutting things down in the fall. I think that's a trend that will continue until we get better handle on the situation, healthcare situation. So, yeah, I guess we'll just go around the room and Councilmember Wilden, thanks for your participation on the committee as well.
Thank you. I'm glad I went. I learned a lot. And just so you know, I went into this meeting fully in support of two goals for myself: having a safe event, and number two, having it, in my mind, better than last year. I came out of there knowing that's not going to happen. That's just not a reality. It can't. And the people on the committee were in agreement, in my mind. Including the sponsor, because they do this all over the nation. And so seeing a large bike event, again, in my mind, just doesn't make sense. Number one goal, it's got to be safe. I don't care what we do. I came up with a whole page list of things that we could get done in the area to spread out the crowd, and it still didn't make sense. So that's where I'm at. And so my question would be, do we still do an event, a smaller event, and what is it? And also it was discussed that people are going to come to Cottonwood no matter what because of the heat, whether we do an event or not. And I'm probably in favor of doing something, because how can we help, as I said last time, how can we help our businesses and our hotels get business in the restaurants? And that would be do an event. Possibly. So it's mixed.
Councilmember Henry?
So having reviewed additional information, I completely support the recommendation from our committee. Some of those folks have been doing this for years. I know, a couple of those members have been on the committee and have been involved in prior years. So I completely support that, and our city manager's earlier recommendation that we avoid, that our historic Thunder Valley Rally event. I do think we should look at something smaller. For me, it's going to come down to costs, and that's part of our discussion Thursday night. Really, again, if we're cutting, we have to meet our projected budget losses. What's the cost benefit with the sales tax and, filling our hotels versus where we might need to be allotting funds elsewhere? I don't expect tonight to have any kind of a cost estimate, because that's not the goal for tonight. Mm-hmm. But if we could do a red, white, and bruise, at some point, that seems more like a summer, like more of a July type party. Bike night, I also don't know that we couldn't do a bike night anyway. I love that idea. So I don't know if that's something that we could do on a very cost-effective basis anyway. that wouldn't be a replacement for TVR, but would be something fun to do. So really, I guess I'll quit getting off in the weeds for me. No on TVR this year. I think our committee, our city manager got that one right. Yes on another event. What that event looks like depends on costs, and maybe I'd have more guidance for you at a later time. You know, after Thursday, I don't know if you would need us to say, here's your budget, and then have you come back with what you can do. Having been to our New Year's Eve celebration, I've seen that you can do a lot with nothing. So I do think we should be able to make something, I'd be hopeful we'll be able to make something happen this year.
Absolutely, and Mr. Mayor, if I can, Councilmember Henry, one of the reasons we decided red, whites, and blues is to play off the Labor Day. We're only a week and after at that point from the Labor Day holiday, so it's a little bit of a stretch, but that's kind of how that idea was born.
I completely missed it. Thanks for explaining.
Mr. Mayor, if I can give us a prelude to Thursday night. We have about $35,000 currently budgeted in the general fund, but the direction would be to get as many sponsorships as possible for the event. If we do whatever band, even a small stage costs a little bit of money, so we could do it. One of the questions, which I'm not sure I heard from either council member yet, is do we want to do that date? There's the question of TVR and that date. It's saved. We think people might be traveling up to this area anyways. It's a beautiful area, so it might be a great time to do an event that weekend. It's already saved. It already doesn't conflict with other things going on, if they're going on. So I just want to make sure that, and I wasn't at the meeting, that weekend is okay to do something else.
I don't know that it was really discussed or made any kind of firm comment.
Yeah, to that point, Councilmember, is I think it was split down the room too. I think some people felt that it's saved. We've already got people here. We've already got hotel rooms booked. Do we go ahead and capitalize on that, or do we put it out there now so people can get out of those reservations and know that we're doing something different? They can change their time of travel.
Do we have time? Is there enough time, do you think?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember, I do think that there's enough time to put on an event, specifically something that's not that large of a scale. We're able to do. We are lucky enough to know that we've done a Walking on Main style event, which is a similar size is what I would think. And even if it's smaller than that, we at least know that we can be successful putting those ones on. And I know what the planning and preparation takes for that event, so I would just mimic it, probably similar to the foundation of that and how we built that program.
So it depends on Thursday night.
I don't know. I'm fine with that date. I think the weather's usually great. We don't have to deal with monsoons. A lot of us take off, periodically during the summer. So personally, but honestly, I'm not. If there were a compelling argument for a different date, I'd change my mind. But I do like what you said. We know it doesn't conflict. I don't know that we're going to have that problem this year. Anyway, but if folks have already made plans to come up here that haven't canceled them, it might make sense. But I'm also could go another way as well.
And I think that date's set for next year, anyway. So we still got it.
Councilmember Holmes, what are your thoughts?
What I hear, I like. I have a question. How big a crowd are we expecting when we put on this event for Friday night, where we would have Muggy-On playing? Are we expecting?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and council member. So what we would do is, based on the direction from the council, is we would build our event program based off of that. So if we are looking to still capture on that tourism, we would probably expect a little bit larger crowd. If we get the direction to kind of keep this simple and local, we wouldn't extend that marketing outreach. We wouldn't go over to the mountain to Prescott Valley. We wouldn't get out into the Phoenix demographic or maybe even the Flagstaff demographic. We'd keep that up. So if outsiders did come in, great, we appreciate it, but that wouldn't be our goal. It would be more of a celebration for our local communities.
Okay. What I was wondering, we have a stage. How many people are we going to have? Mm-hmm. Could we put the bands, Muggy-On Friday and the local bands on Saturday, on this stage, have this I don't know, do they dance? Are they just here to hear the music?
They dance.
Do they?
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor.
If there's not too many. But that's what I was wondering. It would be a way to cut down on our expense, mm-hmm. and at the same time, use the clubhouse and attract the people. And then if it rains, oh well, you're
I think
inside.
This is way too small a building.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Hulse, yeah, it's going to be too small for the lead band, but I can tell you that OTA, when I spoke with Brenda, she was excited about possibly having bands in the clubhouse, actually hosting events in Old Town. So I think we could do high school bands, some of our local up-and-comers, some of our cool, they would only attract really locals. I think we might be able to do a few little things like that, either in the clubhouse or in the activity park back there. So I think it's an idea. It wouldn't be an idea if we did a big band, but again, we're really trying to figure out if that's even what council wants. I think we could probably do it somewhere, the big band on either Friday or Saturday, and not advertise it. My guess is we would still get 1,000 plus, just because of their following. Some even said that they carry the event anyway, that they bring a lot of people up from the valley and otherwise. So So part of the questions, we'll bring you a plan back after this meeting. During the process, the budget will be next Thursday. Based on your discussion, the group will meet again, come up with an idea and a plan. My guess is if we went with Mogollon, we need to figure out a way to limit it and make sure we can fit it somewhere, so ticket sales or some kind of thing, so that we can manage the crowd. I don't want to not plan for a big crowd and then get a big crowd.
Yep.
So we'll have to figure out a way to manage that, but we will come back to council with the idea, working with our partners.
Thank you. Yeah.
Councilmember Howard?
The number one thing that we're charged with as council members is the health and safety of our community. I have a concern about drawing large crowds up here at this time. We are not out of the woods with this coronavirus situation. They expect a resurgence. Bringing more people up here, I don't think helps us locally because of this pandemic. And it's not over by a long shot. So I just can't support it. In fact, I'm surprised that we're looking at having a car show coming up that's going to draw people. And you know that these crowds are not going to have a 6-foot distance. Some might cover up, others not. We just don't know. And I don't think it's worth the chance, in my mind.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Naren?
I'm also a little bit concerned with trying to draw a large crowd. So, I mean, I don't care if we use the same date or a different date, but I'd be more in favor of doing something local and small and making sure we can control that, because they are predicting a resurgence of this in the fall. And so if we plan on any kind of a larger event and we bring all these people up here, we're putting a lot of our vulnerable populations, our elderly and our people that are ill in some risk, and I'm not in favor of that.
Understood.
Vice Mayor?
I think it'd be great to do something. I think that date it's a good date. I mean, we've got that. We're used to doing something. I don't know what event would work. I mean, that's what you guys do. I'd love to see it right behind us here in Old Town. I think that size that we could expect, and perhaps it'll all go south. If something happens like that, people aren't going to come. I think we do need to give people that choice. Whether they want to come, whether they want to stay away. I think we need to reward our community too. I think they're itching to get out. I think they need something. I think a lot of people would be disappointed not to have something go on. So there are a lot of concerns on both sides, but I think we need to have something.
Well, yeah, I agree that we don't yet know what the future holds, and I think that working with our local community, local talent like Mogollon, I think is really helpful because we'll all be flexible in whatever happens. If there is a resurgence in the fall and we have to reassess, and I know that was a manager's concern with moving forward with TVR was to sign a national act. There was no out clause provided. and those it cost a lot of money to secure a national act, and so just the risk was too great. And I am pleased to see that the committee made the decision to not damage the brand that they've worked so hard to build all these years, and postpone that event for this year. That said, we have two things going for us. We're the heart of Arizona wine country, and our vision in Cottonwood is to inspire a vibrant community. We can leverage those things to provide an event for our community that celebrates our community. We don't have to shoot for the moon on this. We just have to provide something that speaks to our community, celebrates our community, encourages our community. And I think we have a lot of great ideas floating around for that. I like the red, white, and brews idea. I think that helps complement the wineries, the breweries that we have here. That's a good thing. Something that came up that brought a smile on Mariana Jimenez's face, which you don't see too often, but when you do, it brightens up the room. Sizzlin' Salsa is another great event that we had here in the community that celebrated Sizzlin' Salsa. It was a great event. Do you remember that?
Mm-mm.
No?
I like it. I like what I'm hearing. Let's do it.
And it could be held on, I think, that same date as Mexican Independence Day, I believe, that same weekend. And that could be an idea. Again, an event that's not trying to draw folks from out of town to our community, but an event that really is to celebrate our own community. And incidentally, those do tend to provide a great experience for visitors from out of town. If we are expecting a crowd, I think we need to limit that in some capacity. So if it's by ticket sales or otherwise, if we do have a live act like Mogian, I think it's important that we limit the number. I think we know that now, and I think we can gauge that as we move forward, at the end of summer, to see what happens with the spread or non-spread of the virus.
Just one thing, Mr. Mayor. Cinco de Mayo is not a Mexican Independence Day. Right. It's September 16th.
Okay.
Cinco de Mayo celebrates one battle where Mexican forces, armed with anything they could get a hold of, engaged the French and beat them in a battle in the city of Puebla. I just want to let you know.
I knew it was around that time of September, not the Cinco de
I
Mayo.
think that's why Mary Ann suggested it, because it was on Mexican Independence Day.
Right.
And I thought someone had mentioned, was it pig races or? What was that? I'm sorry, Councilmember Wilden, there was some kind of
I have no
race.
idea. I know nothing.
Mayor, and if I may, I think here again, we are a council that's trying to find balance, and I think it goes without saying that if we're moving forward, we're going to do this in as smart and mindful a manner as possible, following our state and local, not just guidelines, but also good common sense. But we've also got to balance. I mean, earlier we're talking about being good partners with our businesses and talking about signs. Signs don't matter if we don't have folks up here. So while I'm not interested in having thousands of people, I do think that it's important to realize that we are dependent on sales tax. Our businesses do need cars in our parking lots and seats in their chairs, et cetera. So again, I take both Councilmember Nairn and Councilmember Hargey's points as very well made and would echo those, but I think that also goes without saying that we need to balance that and having folks up here spending money.
And they are open, and they're not yet to even the new capacity.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think the next year holds. I think it would be wise to consider more frequent, smaller events in the next couple of years. I think it just makes sense, and I think we'll see that other communities do exactly that. So we don't, again, need to try to provide this bang-up event that draws thousands upon thousands of people. I think smaller, more frequent is going to be wins.
Well, Mr. Mayor, we'll come back with something. We'll get the group together and make plans. We have time. We'll try to find balance.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Okay, next is claims and adjustments, and I would move that we pay the claims.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion, Councilmember Henry seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, next is the annual review of the presiding magistrate. And pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes 38-431.03.A.1, the council may vote to convene an executive session to discuss this matter, subject to the magistrate's right to compel the council to conduct the session in an open meeting. So this is the part where we get to kick everyone out, I believe, if we
I'll move that we convene an executive session for the annual evaluation of our magistrate judge.
Okay, I'll second that. So Councilmember Henry made the motion, the mayor seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.